And now we're recording. Okay, so I'm going to pull up our PowerPoint today and get us started. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to minimize this and present. Perfect. All right. Well, welcome to Advocacy Essentials. I'm excited you all are here. This is something near and dear to my heart because it not only lays the groundwork, but hopefully helps you all as you move forward in your organizations with advocacy. And so today's agenda will lay the groundwork with laws and regulations, especially when it comes to advocacy and public policy and the rest of our list today. And so we'll also be discussing lobbying and why it's important for your organization, and also voter outreach, not only because it's an election year and the election's in less than 3 weeks, by the way. How scary is that? But it's important for your organization to get involved in. So we'll move from there. First, let's discuss member benefits. So all of you are UNA members, of course, and so, but we wanted to remind you that you have access to training and events, a plethora of training and events, and on the next slide, I'll get into what's coming up, but most of them are free. And of course, we have our credential trainings, which provide more in-depth knowledge and guidance with your organization. And then there are discounts to like our credentials, but also to things like Nonprofit Day on the Hill, which will go virtual. So maybe it'll be called Nonprofit Virtual Day on the Hill. So, and there's those. And then of course our job board, which nearly all of you must be familiar with, but just know you can post your jobs, your volunteer opportunities, and board opportunities on there. Volunteer opportunities is relatively new, but we've heard a lot of good feedback that people are able to find volunteers through our job board. And last but not least, our group health insurance, which if you have 2 or more employees at your organization, you all can be a part of. It's through Regents Blue Cross, and they offer a discounted rate for nonprofits. So those are some of the member benefits. And here's what's coming up. A lot of things coming up. It will be event and training almost every week for about a month. So you have your credentials and your other trainings like Easy Street Fundraising, which should be really exciting to learn about. And then of course, my favorite, credential and advocacy and civic engagement, which will build upon what you all will learn here in Advocacy Essentials. All right, so let's roll right into it. I wanted to lay the groundwork because understanding the laws will also help you understand what you can and cannot do with advocacy. So first off, the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, gives you and your organization the right to free speech, to peaceful assembly, and so you have the right as an organization to advocate, to lobby, to do anything that advances your mission in that way. And so this has been played out in courts, and so this is well established. And of course, the thing that created our organizations, this little fancy, these fancy laws right here, Section 501c3, it created your organization. You're tax exempt, and also laid some groundwork telling you a substantial part of your work cannot be lobbying lobbying and pursuing uh, uh, legislation and policy. So there are 2 tests for that. We'll get into it when we get into lobbying, but just know that there are limits to how much you can do with lobbying. Then 501H, and so this is technically a form as well. 501H election, you file this with the IRS and telling them you'd like to lobby and for legislation, and it's not necessarily required, but it is good practice. Uh, and so, and then you can also designate which of the 2 tests, which of course I told you I'm going to get in later, you would like to submit your organization to. And then 4911, Form 5768, all lay out rules for nonprofits on what you can and cannot do. So there's a lot of laws governing our organizations, but they aren't as scary as you think. So, and then also there's state lobbying laws. If you're going to get a lobbyist, they have to be registered with the state, or if someone from your organization is designated as that lobbyist, say your executive director or your policy director, the state, anytime someone's going to go and lobby for legislation or against legislation, uh, it is required to submit an application and telling them that you are that lobbyist, and you know you're going to follow state ethics laws when it comes to lobbying. All right. There we go. All right. So now that we've laid that groundwork, let's talk a little bit about advocacy. So there's a lot to advocacy. You know, lobbying is a part of advocacy, but that's not the only thing about advocacy. It's whenever you talk to people about your organization and its mission, when you decide to distribute educational materials about your organization, or about why it's important to maybe provide homeless services or healthcare to these populations. And so it's very educational. It's not always directed at policy, but it has the potential to advance your organization's priorities. And so, and there's a lot to it. I've seen advocacy done in several different ways. Whether that's a presentation before lawmakers about what you do, or you're out among a population educating the community, that is all part of advocacy. Or it's educating your donors or potential donors about your work. And so I have a discussion question, and I wanted to give us a minute to discuss this. In what ways are you currently an advocate for your organization? I can't see you all, but you can speak or put it in the chat. So.
I'm the volunteer coordinator of the In Between, and obviously talking to my volunteers and give them heads up and about our mission, and then they go out in the community and spread the word and help us raise our profile. So, and also they come and help with the legislator if and when called upon. So
Wow.
I think that's very important.
That's great. So you've seen tangible impact from your advocacy efforts.
Yeah,
awesome.
for sure.
I think another way is to do like presentations or small just outreach at local community council meetings. I know when I started at the In-Between last year, I actually attended a couple of them. Again, everything's virtual now days and kind of strange, but getting involved in wherever your agency is located physically and or where your population is being served, engaging with those community councils so that they know about you, and you can give presentations or just, you know, updates is a great way to get a broad swath of people.
That's awesome. So have you seen that that engaging these community councils has grown more support for the organization? Yeah.
I would say yes. And to that effect, the In-Between, when they first started or within their first year, also created a neighborhood advisory council. And so that was still at their first location and is still at the one that we're at now on 13th South and 13th East. And that neighborhood advisory council are people who just want to, you know, keep up to date and you know, learn things. Again, we have them usually quarterly. And anyone's welcome to them, but we haven't had one obviously in a while. But it also spurred a secondary group for us, I would say. And I'm forgetting the name of that little group of ours, guys, at Maryland. That
The
Maryland
YIMBY group.
Yes, the YIMBY group. Thank you. Totally went out of my head. So we've got a group of supporters that meet also quarterly or whatnot and help do donation drives or, again, communicating with their neighbors about the importance of the work that the In-Between does. So yeah, I think there's been some significant advances by just talking with the community that we are in and around.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Let's see, looks like we got something in the chat. Oh, yeah. Take care, Becky. Sorry you have to get off. All right, anyone else? In what ways are you currently an advocate for your organization?
Well, one of the main ways that I've been an advocate for our organization over the last year, which is as long as I've been here, is coalition building. So I've been building a lot of really important relationships with other stakeholders that our organization didn't necessarily reach out to before.
Great, yeah.
Can we just say where, I know a bunch of us are from the In-Between, but like Rachel, where are you from? Where is everyone else from?
I am from the Humane Society of Utah, as is Abby Benish. She is my associate and she's on here as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Good to meet you too.
Yeah.
I just recently adopted a 14-year-old Shih Tzu from the Humane
Yes,
Society.
excellent.
That's great.
We love that.
Happy to help. All right. And last chance for this discussion question. Okay. Well, it's so good to hear what advocacy efforts you are already doing or thinking of doing and are, I don't think I went to, oh yeah, I did. Whoops. Oh, sorry. And it's good to hear what you are currently doing in your organization because it's important to recognize that your work, you know, your specific job helps advance the organization in important ways. Yes, it's not necessarily about policy or lobbying, but it is important to recognize what you do as advocacy. Advocacy is a hodgepodge of many different activities that that can help your organization. So our second discussion question, which I accidentally went to, is what kinds of advocacy are you thinking of doing? And kind of keep these bullet points in mind. Yes, they aren't everything you can do, but I kind of want to hear what are some things you all are thinking of doing before we move on. Or want to do. So.
I'll go ahead and talk again because I can talk
Yep.
all day. um, so one thing that we're looking to and hoping to do in this session, not hoping to, we're going to do, is going to be pushing a bill to try and get animal care facilities, so including pet shops, municipal shelters, private shelters, rescues, all regulated. We have zero regulation in the state right now, and as a result, a lot of rescues become hoarding situations. We also have the problem with municipal shelters not holding animals for an appropriate amount of time, or inappropriately and inhumanely euthanizing animals. So our hope is that if we can get some regulations in place, we can better care for the animals in our community overall.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's much needed.
Definitely.
Well, I wish you luck. Yeah, that's a heavy ask to get some regulation, but I'm sure you'll find it.
Oh, we know Utah does not like regulation, but it's necessary, and we're one of the only states that doesn't have anything like that.
Well,
So the in-between is also working on putting forth a bill, or I always get the language mixed up, but we're currently up for a medical respite waiver. So for the medically frail, which is what the in-between does, is work, for end-of-life care and medical respite for the terminally ill, medically frail. And yet there's no Medicaid waiver. So when we take care of residents and they come to live with us, usually there is no reimbursement cost from anything. So it is a lot of fundraising and grant writing and grant development. However, we are been working for the past couple of years on getting a medical respite waiver, 115. All the legal terms I don't know about, but we are going forth, and our executive director and our lobbyist supporter have been working with Representative Dunnigan and the Health and Human Services Committee, and we are being listed as a pilot program for the medical respite waiver program to come to Utah. So we've got a heavy ask as well coming up in February or at the ledge session. And so that's one of the big things that I think we at the in-between are looking for, is how to got sort of the professional support behind us, but how do we also engage the community support behind us in really making sure that the voice is heard, that the medical respite is needed for our homeless friends, and that we also have the ability to get reimbursement for it.
oh,
That work.
great. Yeah, it may sound, yeah, it seems like a heavy ask, but I think, if you have Representative Dunnigan and you're meeting with him and they seem supportive, I think you all are well on your way. So that's awesome. Anyone else? What kinds of advocacy are you thinking of doing? As there's a lot of sunlight in my eyes.
I don't think, I mean, I'm with the in-between also, so obviously we're working on that. I know for my position here, I'm an advocate for our clients, and I think that's where the bulk of my advocacy work is done, is advocating for our clients and their care, and then in a broader sense, our unsheltered community as well. So I'm working on advocating for more end-of-life care and recognizing the people that need that care out on the streets. And so that's kind of another aspect of our advocacy work.
Yeah, direct work with your clients and advocating for their well-being is probably the greatest advocacy you can do. So thanks for sharing, Matilda.
Again, the in-between is probably dominating today's meeting, obviously.
That's okay.
I'm in the process of forming an advocacy committee with volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a new avenue for me too. And so and maybe together with some board members, we can go even further. So that's another plan in the project.
That's
Maybe.
awesome. Wow. The in-between is
Yeah,
all sorts of advocacy.
here we go.
Yeah. And I guess you all are really a good case example of this. The three main types of advocacy that I see anyways is, advocacy with policymakers, advocacy with and for your clients, and advocacy driven by volunteers and the board. Uh, and that's one thing I forgot to bring up is how your board can be your strongest advocates. They may not work for the organization, but they sure are strong supporters of it, and they want to ensure that your organization thrives and that the people you serve thrive. And so involving them in ways when they have the time uh, in advocacy is probably a great tool in your toolbox, your advocacy toolbox. Great. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me. Oh, I wonder where it went. There it is. So before we get more into lobbying and so on, I wanted to point out that there is a difference. Advocacy is like the umbrella, and lobbying is like one of the many little facets in that umbrella of advocacy. And so the Forica Group, which is a nonprofit association in Alaska, which by the way is where I'm from, uh, created this video about this difference. And while it may not be the most exciting video, I think it kind of illustrates this very important difference, but also how they are intertwined with one another. So let's see if the sound works okay.
What's the difference between lobbying and advocacy? This is a great question. We get it a lot at the Forica Group. And the simplest answer is that lobbying is a subset of advocacy. So if we think of advocacy as a function of three different things: one is you have an opinion, two, you want to share it with someone, three, to change their mind. We do that a lot in the nonprofit sector. We also do that for ourselves. We do that for others. We do that for our community. But when we speak to people who make laws and really direct or implement public policy, that's when we enter this small portion of the overall concept of advocacy called lobbying. Lobbying is very simply, and this is an IRS definition, lobbying very simply is a communication with someone who makes laws. A legislator could be a city council member, could be a state legislator, could be a member of our federal congressional delegation. And three, that we're asking them to make a change in a specific piece of legislation. So if we think of a big pie, so 100% of this pie is sharing an opinion with somebody to change their mind. Only a very small slice of that pie, maybe 5%, is dedicated to lobbying, and that's when we are advocating in front of people who make laws.
Awesome. Hope that was useful. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Now that we've listened to my colleague in Alaska about the difference between lobbying and advocacy, it's a very small portion of the advocacy pie, and the in between, you all are a great example of that, and what advocacy can look like at an organization. So, but with lobbying, you're either requesting, or a few of you in an organization are going to be up at the Capitol lobbying for a piece of legislation or against a piece of legislation. And so, you technically are a lobbyist. And what that means is you're meeting with elected officials or voters, because ballot measures are technically a lobbying effort, because voters are the lawmakers in this sense. But to discuss a bill or a regulation or a ballot measure, not so much regulation, since that's executive branch more often, and the executive branch, when you're talking with them, any of those bodies, it's technically not lobbying. And so beyond that, it's, you know, you're campaigning and you're actively trying to persuade people how to vote, or you propose your own legislation and you talk with a lawmaker or with voters, if you're doing a ballot measure, to convince them of this. So it's all about, like the video talked about, convincing people how to vote, whether that's a lawmaker or it's a voter. And so in some, from my friends at the National Council of Nonprofits, lobbying is simply communicating with decision makers about existing or potential legislation and urging a vote for or against. So the three components: you have to have these decision makers, actual legislation, and you are asking for a vote. And so, but it's also important to remember, like I talked briefly about earlier, there are two tests. Since a 501c3 cannot have a substantial part of their work be lobbying, there are you know, the IRS regulates this pretty heavily. And so if you file a 501h election, or you're just simply going to do some lobbying and some advocacy, there are two tests that the IRS uses to see if lobbying is a substantial part of the work of your organization. One's called the substantial test. And the substantial test is it's subjective in a lot of ways, based on what I've seen. The IRS and whoever ends up looking at this, they see whether the accumulation of time and resources at your organization makes up a substantial part of your work. That's really about it. It's that vague. Or if you elect to use the expenditure test, there's a hard set amount of money that it's a percentage, and I believe it was 10%. I have my little cheat sheet here. Yeah, it's about 10% of your organization's budget, but although this can change depending on how the IRS feels about these things, but it's a more hard set test, and which is easily trackable by your organization, or if you're the finance person, and you know, it's very clear you cannot spend more than this certain amount of money on lobbying efforts. So that's lobbying in a nutshell. And so before we move on to the discussion question, I wanted to see if there are any questions about lobbying. I know a lot of you are thinking about getting into this more. No? That's okay. Okay, well, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to unmute yourself and ask. Lobbying laws can get a little complicated. Let's see. So I wanted to ask you all, where does advocacy and lobbying fit into your organization's work as a discussion item? Yeah, we talked about advocacy, but I wanted to ask about both to see if this is something you're actively thinking about, If so, why? And how can I help you with that?
I don't know if you can help me with it,
Okay.
but we do have issues in general trying to convince most people in Utah, especially the legislature, that animal issues are of importance. I mean, one of the main things that Abby and I use as evidence of this is the link. And for anyone who's not familiar with what the link is, it's the correlation between violence against animals and violence against humans. So generally, if there is neglect in a home of an animal, there's also neglect of a child or an elder. And same thing with violence, unfortunately. So getting people to understand that, understand how real it is, and understand how all of these issues are interrelated, all social issues are interrelated, is a struggle, especially when you're dealing with an old boys club, which is frankly what Utah is. So yeah, so we're gearing up for that. We're preparing ourselves for that battle, but that's our biggest hurdle, I think.
Yeah. Intersectionality is kind of a hard concept for people. Put it simply, it's it's still sort of like an academic term, but it's a hard one because a lot of people, including our legislators, think in the way of, one issue at a time. Yeah, there's connections between these issues,
Yep.
but this is where messaging comes in. There's no easy answer. I'm going to say that.
Right.
And, but I encourage your organization to test your messages, see if they work. Whether that's through seeing when people come to the Humane Society, talking to them about this and seeing if they, grasp that and if it's an effective message. People in movements, movements struggle because we get tangled up in a whole bunch of other issues that are obviously connected, but unfortunately, the mass public takes things one at a time, a lot of times. So
Right.
I don't have good, hard advice for that, unless others do.
Well, when is this going to be up, Rachel, at the upcoming ledge session? Have you been doing any work leading up to it, or are you guys just gearing up to kind of get the message out now?
So we've been both prepping for it and gearing up. We don't have a sponsor yet.
Okay.
We have a potential sponsor depending on how this election goes. We do have someone that has is up for election that would sponsor all of our bills, which would be fantastic. But obviously we can't bank on that.
Right.
So we've been kind of doing both just kind of getting the messaging out into the public.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of radio interviews, TV interviews, and stuff like that, and talk about particularly the shelter regulation issue, mostly because people are very upset about gas chambers in this state, and I kind of just want to shake them and say, oh, that's just the beginning. So we're doing that, and then we're also actually writing the bill and preparing, and I'm doing some work with the executive branch as well, but it's slow going.
Wow. Do you have a lobbyist do you have like a dedicated lobbyist?
Just me.
All right. Good job. That's a lot of work then, I would say, in writing the language and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any advice either, except for just keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully if there's somebody who's up for election, obviously they may know enough other people that they're going to be one of the biggest advocates, I would say, in helping communicate everything about what you're proposing, whether or not they get elected, right? So making sure that person just knows everything. So I would say that.
Yeah, we keep that person supported as much as possible, within reason.
Yeah.
Mostly on my personal life that I do that. But yeah, Abby and I are both attorneys, so we're we're geared up for it, I think.
You're geared up.
Well,
Nice.
do
That's
you
awesome.
all have partner organizations you're working with, like best friends or?
So yes and no. We have some partners. We have others, maybe not so much. It's complicated in animal welfare. It's hard to make inroads with similar organizations, which is very difficult. But we do have a lot of other support from other aspects of animal welfare outside of the private shelter world.
Gotcha. Okay. And even though this is just, basic presentation, I wanted to say one of the best things I've seen is coalition building.
Mm-hmm.
If you have enough support from the animal welfare community, like Rough Haven, Cause, the Best Friends Animal Society, all those organizations and more, maybe including the county animal shelters, I think I think your message will be more effective that way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so oftentimes, when people go it alone, it's a tough sell, especially if there's other people in the network that kind of do what you do, but not exactly. And so yeah, can't emphasize that enough. And if you have different people from different organizations saying the same message, then legislators are likely to listen. So, and it goes for everyone, anyone in the space that of the people you help, or the animals you help, or the spaces you help. It's important to be connected with others so that when you have something like this come up, you can call upon them and to action, and hopefully they'll be willing to help you.
That's been the last 12 months of my life. I've had some successes and some not so many, or not so much, but we're working on it.
Yeah, and sometimes that takes just a long time. So, but someone has to lay that groundwork. Anyway, anyone else? Where does the organization, where do you see advocacy and lobbying fitting into your organization's work? Or do you have issues that are coming up that you need help with? Anyone else? So, well, I'm getting crickets, so we will go ahead and move on. So let's talk a little bit about voter outreach. So voter outreach is a great tool for advocacy. It lets people know about your organization, the causes and issues your organization cares about, and a way for people to get to know your organization in sometimes natural ways, sometimes in more formal ways. And so let's talk a little bit first about what you can and cannot do. First off, you can never, as a 501c3, you can never tell a person who to vote for. You cannot campaign for a candidate. You may like them personally, and lots of people in your organization may lean a certain way politically, but in no way can you do that as an organization, support a candidate. Else you risk losing your tax-exempt status. You can't donate to organizations. Oh, Kelly, you raised your hand.
Sorry, I just, I've come across this in a couple of different situations. Maybe it's an election year, and this was mostly when I was at my previous nonprofit. We'd invite, legislators, whatever, things like that to some of our events, or somebody picks up a story on us and says, hey, can we come and interview you? But it's a candidate running for office, and they come and say, oh, look at this great nonprofit in our community. We talked to them and here's what it looks like. And then they post that on their like campaign feed, their Facebook, their social media. Is that in essence the agency standing behind a candidate, or can that ever be seen as something like wrong, or like how
Uh,
does that really happen?
right. And that's where it gets a little gray and sticky, because it is the candidate doing that. Uh, and so what has helped some organizations is, when they are tagged in something, they it's sometimes they just let it be. And then other times when it's a controversial race
Mhm.
and it's high profile, you have like a congressman saying, hey, I support these guys, and basically that's why you should elect me. Then perhaps doing a little disclaimer would help.
Yeah.
And and so there's a lot of gray area. The
Tricky.
laws
Yeah.
don't tell everything, but
That's always just one I've wondered about, because I think it happened literally right before I left the Family Sports Center, and
yeah,
I just was like, oh my gosh, can that be construed as us supporting a candidate
yeah,
when literally the candidate's the one that like bought us out, right? So
right. And it's also something, if you have like a volunteer attorney on your board, or you're able to get, if you don't have the resources, able to get something to review it for free. That this is something where every attorney has an opinion,
mhm.
and your attorney will tell you what you can and cannot do, hopefully. Uh, and so I'm a policy analyst, policy professional, but I'm not an attorney. So
Thank you.
there's my disclaimer. But and so there's a lot of gray area, but the thing we all need to remember is to be nonpartisan. We are nonpartisan organizations. Uh, if something comes up where it appears you're partisan, then you I encourage you to do what you can to make sure that it's well known that we are nonpartisan. We are not endorsing anyone in this race, but we are grateful for candidate such and such for their support and advocacy, and we hope the other candidates such and such will be open to this as well. So something like that. But anyways, you also cannot host events and forums with one or select group of candidates if it's all from one party, or it's the candidate that's your neighbor or your friend and who loves your organization, and the event just can't be for them. And so be aware of that. There's a lot of things you can do, though. You can encourage and register people to vote. Registering people to vote is an essential part of our democracy. It's civic engagement, and it's a nominally nonpartisan thing, even though people would like to make it partisan. But so, in what ways can that help your organization? The people you serve. If their voice is lacking in the public space, uh, not those who are homeless in Utah can register to vote at an address. If you're in the in between, maybe your address. I know the road home. I have a lot of friends there. They're actually the first ones to let me know that here in Utah, the homeless can vote. So there's that, and the people that come and support you all. Uh, or adopt from you all. Uh, it's it's a great and wonderful activity. And there are actual statistics and out there saying that there are a lot of the people we help register and encourage to vote actually go and vote because they were contacted by someone about from an organization they personally care about. So you can do forums and questionnaires. Some organizations do a scorecard and how but that's an iffy one. I don't encourage scorecards because those are always biased in some ways, and it can look like you're trying to be partisan. But an issue forum, say, how does the people in House District 40 feel about, or how do the candidates, feel about uh, the rights of pets and the humane treatment of pets and animals. And so we're hosting this multi-candidate forum with all the candidates we can get. And so we encourage you to come. And then the questionnaires, which is kind of like scorecards, but are allowable in a lot of cases. And so it's, this is what the candidates think about this issue, and their opinions on this question we're asking them. And so you have to be fair. And if you can't get every candidate, then that's okay, but if you only have one, then you may want to cancel that form. Then you can campaign for issues and ballot measures. Ballot measures, of course, is lobbying. It's considered lobbying by the IRS, so make sure you watch out for that. But if there's something you really care about, like the amendment striking slavery from the Constitution, so your organization is very much in favor of that. You can set aside some time and resources to promote that, and also promote an issue during the election that you care about. And that's not necessarily going to be like a legislation or a ballot measure. It's an issue that you're trying to bring up that people should care about. And then get out the vote efforts. There's a lot of resources and out there that can help an organization turn out the vote. You register somebody, you want to follow up with them, and like I said earlier, they are more likely to vote because of an organization like yours has touched your life in some way. So that is, of course, allowable in these circumstances, but always, always, always be nonpartisan. Or try to appear nonpartisan, although you shouldn't just appear nonpartisan. But do your best, and if you have attorneys in like the Humane Society and they can help you interpret the laws and around lobbying and voter outreach, and guide your organization in a safe, legal way to do these things. Because every attorney has an opinion, but it's, the attorneys at your organization or helping your organization that can really help you and guide you through these processes. So let's see. From what I just talked about, and from anything else that's stewing in your head, how can voter outreach advance your organizing mission and aims? I know I talked quickly through those, so I can slow down and go back and talk about it more, but let's discuss this question.
Well, I have one that is kind of a thought, and it may not be exactly to this, but sort of that scorecard-ish that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Is there a way to kind of do one that is nonpartisan, and you could share it with like your advocates, your volunteers, your supporters, and say, You know, when you're voting this November, look for candidates that, you know, believe in this or support this, and kind of give them like a questionnaire almost to like say, when you're looking for who you want to vote, where does the candidate stand on this? The in-between believes this. Where does a candidate stand on this? You know, we believe this. So it's not really pitching like a candidate or anything. It's literally equipping your supporters with things that are most important to your agency succeeding. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it's kind of like a scorecard in reverse, or here's your questions to go ask your local council people on if they support this, so that you can be an educated voter.
Yeah, yeah. So informing voters is a right that the organization holds, and that comes from way back to the First Amendment. But
Okay.
yeah, scorecards, they tend to be tricky sometimes, only because some organizations, you know, they do a scorecard and it's clearly tilted towards some candidates of a certain political leaning. But then that's probably because they support, this party supports a particular issue always. But with scorecards, yes, you can do it, and always make a disclaimer that we are a nonpartisan organization seeking to inform our supporters about where candidates stand on these issues. And be sure, like, we don't let them know we don't lean a certain way, we don't support candidates, but we want you to worry about this issue, and so here's the information you need to do to make an informed decision. So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Anyone else? All right. So, voter outreach, lobbying, advocacy, these types of activities are ways to advance your organization's work and mission in the community. It's yes, we have to remain nonpartisan, but you know, we care about issues deeply, especially the issues that affect who we serve, and whether that's animals, whether that's the homeless, or whether that's the clients receiving, you know, reduced priced healthcare from your organization. Uh, it's all all to help your clients, all to help those you serve, and it's it's a way, and it's an essential piece. Yeah, there are limits on how much we all can lobby, but you know, we can lobby, and lobbying is important. And yes, it's a dirty word these days, but yeah, I kind of think of us as the good lobbyists, right? And hopefully that's an okay term, but sometimes we are the best ambassadors for what we do. And actually, most of the time, we are the best ambassadors. And so we absolutely can participate in these activities, but we must remain nonpartisan, must have limits, and must be focused on what we do as an organization. There's that. All right, so I wanted to quickly go into some 2020 election information in connection with voter outreach. Of course, 3 weeks, well, 20 days away, November 3rd, general election, very important. Mail-in ballots mailed out, most of them anyways, were mailed out the 12th. I have not received my ballot yet, but they should be in the mail somewhere. Hopefully they're not lost. But deadline to register to vote. It's a tight deadline, and if you're thinking about voter outreach efforts, be sure to remember this deadline, 23rd of October. And people, you and the other people can go to vote.utah.gov. There's also voter.utah.gov. There's not much of a difference between the two websites besides layout, but and to obtain more information. And there are sort of nonpartisan sources out there. Our fellow nonprofits like Action Utah, they have an election hub where they have all sorts of information about how a person can vote, uh, about the candidates, and so much more. It's a great resource that was just created this year. Then you have Votarize, Utah-based nonprofit. Their whole goal and aim is to register and help people vote, especially the young adults, 18 to 29. They have free resources actually for our organizations, like a peer-to-peer texting platform and other ways to reach those you registered to vote to and to help them go out and vote, to make sure they go out and vote. And Votarize, their executive director, Hope, she's very competent, and she's seen organizations and other places that use this platform see a great turnout from those they registered to vote. Then, of course, our other nonpartisan friends, KUER, they have a 2020 election guide, and it's great. And they do great radio programs. But then, of course, you always have Utah's voter information pamphlet. That contains all the information, well, contains summaries of information on all the candidates running in Utah. It's these summaries are written by the candidates themselves, and they have contact information for people to reach out to them directly. But it's a thick pamphlet, so I wouldn't suggest printing it out. But it's a great way to get some necessary but boring information. So there is that. And of course, after this, later today, I will be sending each of you copies of this PowerPoint and other resources on voter outreach, lobbying, and advocacy so that you have them. Sorry, I didn't say that in the beginning, but I just remembered. So there is that. And so one of our last discussion questions today is, from what we've talked about, what steps are you thinking of taking to jumpstart your organization's advocacy efforts in either of these spaces? We talked about three things: advocacy, lobbying, and voter outreach, and all of its advocacy. So I just wanted to hear from you all what you all are thinking.
Again, mine is more client-based, but I've taken some steps, like just in the last week, kind of formed a plan of who I could reach out to that works in our, with our community partners that might be able to spread the word on things that I'm trying to get moving in the community of homeless services. So that's kind of one of the steps I've taken, is emailed some of our community partners and some of the leaders within those organizations to see if they have time to talk with me about some of the ideas that I have to serve our clients better.
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, building a network like that is quite essential. Anyone else?
Well, it's a little late in this year. We will be putting more voter outreach into our advocacy plan for next year. It's just something that we haven't even thought about, but it's something that's really important. And other shelters that I've worked for in the past in other states put out a scorecard each year on animal issues, And that was always super helpful, I think, to the public. So that's something that we could definitely look into going forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I highly encourage that. In odd years, there are lots of city elections, and lots of cities have their own animal shelters too. So, yeah, I definitely encourage that too. And local policy matters. Um, so, yeah, that's great. Glad to hear it.
Rachel, did you do that scorecard as, like you said, it's animal issues? So was that, again, like a generic, or was it targeted to like, this candidate scores this on these issues, or was it, here are the issues and these are the ones that are important? Was it more kind of basic or target?
So I didn't create the last one. It was created at the organization that I worked for. And if I remember correctly, it was vote responsibly. And then it was each of the issues that that organization focused on. So here at the Humane Society of Utah, we only focus on companion animal issues, but that organization focused on, focused on, like wildlife issues as well. So it would be like about hunting permits and things like that. Each candidate, what they voted or
Wow.
what they've expressed that they would vote. It was pretty expansive.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we need to do because there's not very many companion animal issues that come up. But I think funding for shelters is a big issue at the local level that we should probably be informing voters about.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. I'm an animal lover, so I support what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I mean, a 14-year-old Shih Tzu, you got to have a lot of love to take that on. So I love that.
Yep. Anyone else? What's on your minds?
I just want to be ready for the next ledge session. Again, it was my first one with the in-between. Previous agencies I've worked for have never really participated in like nonprofit day on the Hill, or, actually going up and calling out your representatives off the floor. And I attended the advocacy for Day on the Hill, the training that you guys did for prepping for the Day on the Hill. But I think that's kind of what we're looking to do now. Again, advocacy about our clients and the issues and circumstances that face them, but also preparing people around whether it's the medical respite waiver bill, is it just, homeless services in general, end of life care for homeless services, making sure that we start kind of now educating people with those kind of one-liners or things like that, so that they can start honing their elevator pitch, right? And getting ready for whatever virtual Day on the Hill or whatever looks like. I think, again, starting now still is good in getting people to really hone in that message and be able to go and just speak it on behalf of the agency. So I think so Therese as our volunteer coordinator and stuff, looking really to bring a committee together and help support versus kind of scrambling at the end. Last year, we were a little behind in getting a few things set up, but to get volunteers in. So I think just prepping now and being ready for that, whatever it may look like, going up to the Capitol or whatnot, just making sure that we kind of are putting those things in place now, I would say, is one thing.
Yeah. You're doing the right thing. Prepping early is always best. The end of January comes sooner than people think. But yeah, just making sure your message is consistent and on point. People, it's kind of there's a mystique. There's kind of this I don't know how to describe it, but going up to legislators, working with the legislature itself is kind of scary for some people. But first thing to know is that legislators are people too. they have interest, they have a life out of the legislature work, and also they are interested in issues. They are interested in hearing from their constituents, especially. And so finding volunteers and supporters in specific districts is also important, along with, giving them maybe the templates and the tools they need to reach out to their legislators is important. Although having template messages is a little iffy because they aren't always effective, because people will often just copy and paste instead of adding their personal touch. But what can you do? But and so having all those materials in place now is going to help, and especially now that next week is the last interim meetings until general session. So yeah, things to look out for. Anyone else? A lot of the other people on my second page of people have been fairly quiet, but I don't want to pressure anyone into speaking. If you're just here to simply to learn, and listen, that's okay too. But Abby, it looked like you were going to say something.
I'm trying to click and I clicked something wrong and then my mic went off and now my screen's little. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, let's see. Something in the chat. Yep. Thank you, Sarah. Here to learn. Hope you're learning quite a bit. Awesome. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for that. So, wow, I didn't think we'd end early, but we did, and good to know for next year. I'm usually a better in-person trainer than I am virtual. And virtual is kind of the first time I'm doing this, so. But I hope what you learned today are just some basics. What is advocacy? Why you should do it? What is lobbying? Why you should do that too? And what does voter outreach look like for our organizations, and why you should do that? Because all three are very, very essential. Even if you're an organization that you never thought would get involved in these type of things, they are absolutely important for your organization's work. Or if you ever thought, oh, not 501c3s can't lobby, so I'm not going to do that. You absolutely can. There are just limits. So laws and rules around what we can do, but there's plenty we can still do for as nonprofits. So are there any last questions about all three of those subjects? Yeah, Matilda?
I think I just accidentally clicked it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry. But thank you. This has been really great. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, good. Thank you for that feedback.
Hey, Kelly, if I'm able to locate that scorecard from the old shelter that I worked at, would you like me to send it to you?
I think that'd be awesome. I just, I think, again, either, not doing like a specific to like this person up for vote does this, this, or this, but I'm thinking like, if we could inform people with like what issues are important to us and you are a supporter of ours, these are the issues you would be looking for. I think that'd be phenomenal. So I'll throw my email in the chat here. And I think that just would be a great piece of literature that obviously could go out to anyone, right? And probably not for this election season.
Right.
3 weeks as well. But, as we get ready to go into the ledge session, I think still it's important to tell people these are the issues that are important to the work we do. And so people who have that affinity are going to be like, well, I support them and I support them because they do this. Yes, maybe that does align with what I should be looking for in my leaders.
Right, exactly.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Awesome. Glad to be facilitating networking. Anyone else? Feel like you've learned enough? Yeah, I can get into the nuts and bolts. This is what I do for my job. So it may be advocacy essentials, but if there are any more complicated questions, guess now is your time. How are thoughts percolating as I watch each of your faces? Okay, that is totally fine. My information is on the slide, and like I said, this PowerPoint, along with a plethora of other resources I've collected in the last year and a half, I will be posting online and will send to each of you. And let me know, seriously, if you need a sounding board for any ideas for advocacy and so on, then I'm here for you all. Of course, UNAID has its own work that it does. We lobby, we advocate. We haven't gone into the voter outreach space yet, but that is something we're looking at for next time. So too. All righty. Well, you guys get to get out 45 minutes early. How about that? I thank each of you for coming, and please do let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much.
Nice to
Take
talk with
care.
you guys too.
That was